Hour 2 Overdrive continues, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line of the final score. Bryan Hayes, the O-Dog, Jeff O'Neill, Jamie Noodles McLennan, our buddy Keegan Matheson will join us here in a few moments from the Rogers Center. Jays Mets tonight. Mets got past the Jays last night. Vladdy was a little banged up, but he's in the lineup tonight. He's playing tonight. And Chris Bassitt going up against his former team is on a mound for the Jays. And
Jimmy Nance started throwing curveballs, bases loaded. Was pretty fun.
Yeah, it is. Those are always fun. But
like what? I don't know.
Listen, this deep into the season, man, it's actually fun, and it's such a loser's mentality. But you're kind of pulling for the younger guys to contribute. You know, again, you got Spencer Horwitz, I think, is DHing tonight. Joey Luperfido. There's a couple of guys you can look at and be like, all right, are they going to fit in at all into the future? And that's effectively what it is. It's not about what Varsho is going to do. It's not about whether or not Springer is going to stay healthy the rest of the way. You know, it's give me Jimenez, give me Luperfido, give me Horowitz in the lineup. Can Davis Schneider salvage a season that went really haywire there for a couple of months? I don't know. You're trying to find some moral victories, I guess.
Does Alejandro Kirk play regularly on this team next year?
Yeah, he plays every day.
No, I'm saying next year. Next year.
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah, I think they're going to have to figure out who's going to be behind the play with them. I don't think Servin's a guy that they're going to invest in long term. So I would think that that's a position that they're going to have to figure out. But I think they're pretty committed to Alejandro Kirk, right? Like they moved off multiple catchers now.
I know
to give him the job. And
what am I missing?
He's the guy.
Like, what am I missing?
He had a horrible start. He's like a lot of these guys been better lately. It doesn't mean anything. But they're what are they? 68 and 77. They're going to finish. We had this conversation last week. Are they going to finish 75 wins, 77 wins? It depends on what you're comparing it to. If you're comparing it to preseason expectations, they have fallen very, very short. But since the All-Star break, this is effectively what they were too. They really could have fallen off a cliff and become even worse and almost tanked. And it actually hasn't really happened. But I don't have an answer for you on what to expect out of him in the future. Like Kirk is not going to turn into some superstar catcher like he was his rookie year. His rookie season, the guy was an all-star. He had something like an 870 OPS or something. He was basically the best hitting catcher in the American League when he first popped. And that's what led to the Varsho deal. That's obviously what led to Danny Jansen kind of chasing starts. And now they've made their bed, and Kirk's going to be the guy. I guess just accept it. I mean, unless something crazy happens, there's only so much that can happen in an offseason as well, right? You got to be realistic. There's 29 other teams that want to make moves too. The Jays just can't acquire everything that they want to acquire. There will be some things that will fall short, and some things they'll never say the term internal improvement ever again. Ever again will those words be uttered from Ross Atkins or Mark Shapiro.
That's
but behind the
crazy
scenes,
terminology, man.
But they're going to be banking on that. They're not going to announce it publicly, but behind the scenes, they're going to be praying to the baseball gods. We need some internal improvement. We need Kirk to give us 110 games next year and actually perform, reasonably well. If you can't find a catcher that can push him out of starts, maybe you can't find a left fielder. Maybe you can't find an everyday third baseman. And you're just going to have to rely on internal improvement. But kind of like what we were talking about last hour, like the Mount Rushmore of things that have happened to the Leafs that make people just wince. If you use terminology, like statements that have been made by Toronto GMs, internal improvement would be on the Mount Rushmore of statements that fans absolutely detest and despise.
There was one for the Leafs that we forgot. It was respect in the handshake line.
Oh, yeah, there's one. Respect in the handshake line, internal improvement. I could do this all day. I could give you Mount Rushmores for Toronto sports for the next 2 hours straight.
No way. Like
I can't confirm or deny. There's one you can throw in there. The old Fergie back in the day.
I can neither confirm or deny that.
Oh, there's probably so
I'm sure
many.
Berkey had a few too. I'm sure Berkey.
Oh, remember the pugnacity, tenacity, truculence.
Yeah.
That's one. That's one for sure that just never panned out.
Well, Berkey has that famous line, but I don't think he was with the Leafs at the time, where it's like they want to a GD
The lottery.
lottery,
Yeah.
right?
Let's talking about Pittsburgh. Yeah.
Draft Schmaft.
Yeah,
Draft Schmaft's high on the list. That was Cliff Fletcher. Draft Schmaft, whatever. Who cares?
There is some
Draft
T-shirt sayings there.
Okay, give us your Mount Rushmore for the state. I will say internal improvement. Draft Schmaft's a great one. What was the other one I just said about the Leafs? Respect in the handshake line.
That was
for
tough.
sure. Respect in the handshake line.
Respect in the handshake line.
There's a lot of respect in that handshake line.
It might have the highest peak.
Yeah.
Like it might have that kind of.
That's number one. That's
You think so?
Yeah, that's
It might be, man.
It might be the worst ever in the history of the city.
That was tough. Yeah.
They lost
It was
again,
just
but-
out of answers, and he had to come up with something, and it was just.
O had the best line the next day. He's like, "I love Sheldon. He wants a bogey. He wants a
mulligan on
mulligan.
that.
He wants a mulligan on that one."
Dude, that's a breakfast ball like you've never seen before. That's a ball that was hit backwards off the tee.
Dude, St. George's number 10, a snarl hook that that hangs a left and goes back up 18, and you reload immediately.
That's impossible to do that. No one's ever done that before. Don't paint a picture that can't actually happen.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't believe it even if I saw it with my own eyes. Here's Keegan Matheson live from the Rogers Center, MLB.com, joining us here at the Maple Toyota Hotline. Give us your handicapping here. Put your handicap hat on here, Keegan, and handicap the likeliness of us hearing Ross Atkins or Mark Shapiro use the term internal improvement at any point this upcoming offseason.
Oh, boy, minus 10,000.
Yeah.
That's coming up. You can bet $1,000. You're not going to win a penny. That's going to come. There will be some other additions. Bet the over, fellas. Here's my betting advice. Bet the over on syllables. You need to take the over on syllables involved in the words. But, man, there will be some internal improvements. But, God, I don't think it gets any better than respecting the handshake line, guys. I'm listening to you, and I'm thinking, like, would the Bruins say that? That is a
No
deeply
one would,
unserious
Keegan.
moment.
Yeah,
no one
That's
would
not
say
serious.
that.
That's District 5 stuff, dude. That's Mighty Ducks. That's in a script. And honestly, Emilio Estevez says I can't say that because this is ridiculous. We can't have that in the script. Respect in the handshake line.
After the fake goalie misses a save, he would not say that.
Yeah, I will storm off the set if that remains in the script. I can't say
that's
it.
for like international sport. Like if the country of Australia only lost 40-1 to Canada, that's when you break out respect in the handshake line.
Right, exactly. That's exactly it. But it should never happen in the city of Toronto. It just can't happen. But anyway, listen, we're trying to spin this positively because we're into the stretch run here with the Jays, and it's always difficult to evaluate what we have here. What is Spencer Horwitz? What is Addison Barger? What are these players? Joey Loperfido, these younger guys that they brought in that have played and seemingly have actually brought a bit of a spark to the team, have kind of made the game somewhat compelling. You're there every day, you're watching it up close and personal. How would you evaluate what you've seen out of 4 or 5 of these younger guys and try to apply it to some sort of projection on what the team will look like next year?
I think you got to keep Davis Schneider in mind as the lesson. Guys, you look back a year ago, Davis Schneider was God in Toronto. You look even up until April and May, guys. I mean, Davis Schneider is one of the most common jerseys I see around the stadium. And he's the perfect Toronto fan type of player. That scrappy utility guy that comes up, late round pick. People love him. But pitchers are going to adjust eventually. When someone like Spencer Horwitz or Loperfido, Leo Jimenez are coming up, the opposing pitcher is not losing sleep over them. And that's not a knock on them. They just care more about Vladdy, about Springer, about Bo when he's hot. When you start to put up numbers like Davis Schneider did last year, okay, suddenly that pitcher is going to put in some work. They found out that Davis Schneider, high fastballs are a problem. They started doing some different things against him. So when I see a Horwitz, you can throw Addison Barger in there as well. He's had some really good moments. It's great to do it once. You need to see it a full other season. So this is a great start. I can't take anything away from these young guys, but it is an adjustment game. And that is when you see the difference between physical tools and mental tools. I'll use Barger as an example just because he's built like a linebacker. It's ridiculous. He can hit the ball as hard as anybody. He can throw the ball as hard as pretty much anyone on the roster, pitchers included, guys. But how are pitchers going to adjust to him, and can he win that battle back and forth? That's the tough game the Blue Jays need to play now, and you can't bet too big on these guys. You can't say next year these guys are going to be the whole answer, because if a couple of them go in Davis Schneider's direction, we're right back here having the same conversation we've had for years now.
Keegan, we were talking about Bo in the comments. I do find it somewhat odd how there was comments, whether true or not, how there was whispers about a trade earlier in the season. He was like, I would kind of welcome that, and I don't know that to be fact. You might know that to be fact. But to come out and say, I want to win a championship with Vladdy, like, what do you think? How do you think this all pans out? Like, does he get signed? Does he stay here long term? Do they trade him? Like, what does the future hold in your mind for Bo Bichette?
Yeah, interesting few days, guys. It reminds me, I'll compare this to Vladdy. Remember a year ago when Vladdy said, I'm not going to play for the Yankees, even dead? And then somebody probably got in his ear and said, whoa, the Yankees have money. Shush, quiet. That's part of this too. Guys, he's a year away from free agency, and having the team you've played for involved in that bidding matters. Whether you're going to sign with them or not, the more the merrier when you're trying to drive up negotiations. That's going to be part of this down the road. Right now, standing here today, I still think that Vladdy is likelier than Bo to be part of this team long term. It's not overwhelming by any means, but what's changed so much this last year, guys, is how we profile and project each of them. When we had this conversation last year, I would have said, man, I know exactly who Bo Bichette is. And Vladdy, I don't know if he's got 2021 in him again. Maybe he doesn't have that. Maybe he's just good. Right now, we see Vladdy back to that level. He's been one of the best players in the sport for 3 months right now. He looks fantastic. And Bo's had a brutal year with a few calf injuries. The problem, guys, is when we try to play mind reader with Bo, and it's something I try to do all the time. He's someone who, when he does speak, I'll say this, when he talks, he has put thought into it. He's not flying off the handle. He's a guy who plans these things. But he's also someone who is a bit introverted. I mean, Bo could come out and say, I'm going to go play in the KBO next year because I love the Korean style of baseball. Like he's the guy who nothing would surprise me. But where we go from here is more interesting than it was a couple of days ago. I still lean in the Vladdy direction. Signing both guys long-term, that's a ton of cash. And that's a ton of cash beyond the current window the Blue Jays have here. Pretty challenging, I think, to do that.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned it. This year it's been a disastrous season for Bichette. But if he's healthy, like let's presume health next year. Let's say he's 100% healthy. He's playing short. He's hitting somewhere, second, third in the lineup, whatever it's going to be. And he puts together numbers like we've seen in the past. How valuable do you think that is in terms of wins and losses? And how big of a piece of that puzzle could it be for them trying to contend next year, simply penciling in Bo Bichette fully healthy, looking like he did a couple of years ago?
Yeah, 4 or 5 months, guys, I thought Bo was going to get MVP votes. Not win the MVP, but be in that 7, 8, 9 range. Like, I thought he was going to have that type of year, and I was way off. I'd probably make that same bet next year. And he's a guy who's very critical on himself, who's very, very intense. You see kind of the tutelage of Marcus Semien when he was here. Nobody is more intense and takes this more seriously than Bo. None of this is a result of him slacking off. I can say that at the very least. He will be the most motivated player in Major League Baseball next year. I say that without an ounce of hesitation because of how he approaches the game and because it's a free agent year, and that is when you got to put up the big performance. If he puts up a big year, we're talking 30 home runs, 800-plus OPS, nobody remembers this year. It's easy to wipe that off and call it an outlier. If he's got another bad year, well, we're talking about trends, but he can get himself back into that conversation, maybe not quite to Vladdy's number, but still a long-term deal. We're talking big $100, $200 million contracts. That's how quick this could change, but it's got to happen. And this has put doubt in the mind of both fans and the people who are writing a check for millions and millions of dollars. And Bo, I would still bet on him bouncing back, and that's key if he can do that, because this team – they need a star. They don't need more DHs who are 39. They don't need another young infielder who can play 10 positions. That's great, but eventually you need a star, and Bo is probably their best bet at having that next year.
Brian just mentioned the word contend next year. I find it crazy. I mean, upper management, Shapiro has said that, like, we're going to flip this and contend in 2025. What do you make of those comments? Like, it just seems, and it's difficult right now because of how bad they are, and you look at them, and like, to flip the switch and be contending next year, I find that to be crazy talk. Like, is that possible in your mind?
I would go back to 21, 22, 23, 24. We're playing the same tape over and over again, I think, in this city with the Blue Jays. And, yeah, you can call contending making it to the postseason, but they've flamed out each time that's happened. 0-2, 0-2, and 0-2. So I think I said this, guys, when we talked at the start of this year, and I'll say the same thing next year. Even if they win 100 games, we're sitting here October 1 saying, okay, prove it. They've got a reputation that you don't want to have. They have a reputation of a team that can make it and falls apart. So it's got to look a lot different. And there's a start on that with this young group they have. But again, they need stars. They need guys that separate them from other teams. A lot has to happen if they're going to be legitimately competitive next year. Not just trying to get in on that sixth wild card. I'm talking about what competitive meant 10 years ago, when only the really good teams made the postseason, not just the teams who tried. And that's going to involve multiple bullpen pieces. This bullpen's terrible right now. It's going to involve a star hitter, a legitimate hitter, probably another starter. That's a ton of work. And then you're betting on everything to be healthy. And then, you're betting on everything to go different than it has these last couple of years. You're making a lot of bets. That's turning into a big one, guys. It's a long way.
Well, Keegan, I know he's had surgery of the UCL, but have you ever any update? Alek Manoah, has he been kicking around? Like, what, is there any light at the end of the tunnel for this guy? Like, what do you make of that whole situation?
Yeah, it's just a long tunnel. He is still around in Toronto, and most nights you see him walking in from the bullpen with the other starters. Like, he's still very much staying part of this, far more than you often see from a rehabbing player. He's still in Toronto, still being part of the team. But both with him and with Ricky Tiedemann, guys, their former number one prospect who also underwent elbow surgery. Half this organization's undergone elbow surgery this year on the pitching front, unfortunately. Both of those guys, if they pitch next year, it's a success story. You can't bank on it, though. And that's why they're going to need more pitching. They've been really fortunate with that Barrios, Gausman, Bassitt group. Those guys are made of rubber. They can pitch 1,000 innings a year if they need to. But everything else has fallen apart. Mainly elbows have fallen apart. And you got to bank for that. It's been rough.
With Keegan Matheson, MLB.com, Jays Mets tonight. You mentioned Bassitt. He's on the mound. I can't recall the last time you had a player, in the city that has been so outspoken about different things, whether it's with local media, about, earlier in the year, it was the urgency for the starting pitchers to basically carry and win the games. That's effectively what he said. I'm paraphrasing, and I think he was building off what Gausman had also said. But basically, our bullpen is what it is. The bats are dead. If we don't do it, we're basically screwed. Again, paraphrasing. Those were not his exact words. Then he was on with Chris Rose a couple of weeks ago, and he's going back to the Ohtani stuff and where they're at and how there was no plan or no backup plan. How have you handled the covering of Bassitt this year, the way he's been so outspoken, and how do you think the franchise feels about that outspokenness?
He's an interesting guy, an interesting thinker. And I think back to when I started covering this team, kind of the tail end of those playoff runs, where you've got Bautista, Donaldson, Stroman, Martin. A million personalities in that clubhouse would be by far the biggest personality on this team. When I went down to the clubhouse, I did not know what was going to happen and who was going to tell me to go where. It was fun. With Bassitt, it's kind of the same. There are days where I will ask him a question after a game, and I get a one-word answer and a stare. And that's all right. I should probably ask better questions some of these days. I don't bat 1,000. There are other days where he will be the most thoughtful and expansive player on this team. He is a guy who has played for bad teams, played for good teams. He has been good. He's been bad. That makes him someone that I want to listen to on these issues. And certainly there are not that many big personalities, not many outspoken personalities on this team. He's one. And if he was wrong about stuff, I think the organization might have more of a problem with it. But I have not seen him miss all that often. And I remember that comment you were saying, Hayes. I think he said we have to be perfect to win. And for a long time, man, they did. It's frustrating to go out and put on a great performance and someone else screws it up for you. It's an interesting part of that job, but man, he's I never know what I'm going to get after a Chris Bassitt start. That's part of the fun.
Yep, and I guess you'll see what you're going to get tonight, right? Bassitt on the mound, Jays Mets. Enjoy it, Keegan. We always appreciate you doing this, buddy. We'll do it again soon.
You got it, fellas. Take care.
You got it. Keegan Matheson joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline. Check out Maple Toyota's huge truck and SUV lineup, including Tundra, 4Runner, Highlander, and Grand Highlander, in stock and ready to deliver. Visit mapletoyota.com.
That guy's always dialed in. He's always good. He's my favorite guest.
Yeah, Keegan's the man. He's a good man. He's
very good.
Listen, it's a long grind to cover a baseball team that when you realized early in the season it just wasn't going to work out.
Can you imagine, man?
Like, imagine covering the White Sox. Imagine you're the Chicago White Sox MLB reporter. Like, the league is like, you're hired to cover this team and you have to be there every single day. Yeah. Like, you talk about a Gary Thorne, I've had enough.
Yeah. Dude, you'd have to pull a Cecil Harris.
No, I've had enough.
Cecil Harris, Carolina Hurricanes, not very good. He'd be like, didn't really go to the game, did it from my couch. Be like, Cease, come on, man.
Didn't even show up at the rink. Just looked at the box scores. Like, yeah, another tough one.
No, I asked him about a penalty. I'm like, did you think that was a penalty? He goes, I'm not gonna lie, man. I didn't have a close-up view. I wasn't at the game. I did the thing.
I have so much respect for that. Just knows nobody cares about the team.
Well, his bosses aren't fact checking enough. Yeah,
dude,
the
the coverage from Carolina early. There was one camera, one reporter from the local news, one beat writer, Cease, and that was it. That was it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got to Toronto, and there's the regular 20-pack every day. Now there's probably 40.
There's more. Yeah, there's people that are credentialed that get in there, and then it's just it's a circus in there. It's actually too much. I'll be honest. You can't limit it. I think the Leafs do a pretty good job, but there's just the room isn't big enough for the amount of people that want to get in there. Mm-hmm. And, they have to stagger it and bring people out, and then people start hovering around. I don't know how Jonas did it every day. Just his little mic sock would be in there every day. He'd have to elbow his way in there.
It's a grind. It's a grind. Because, like you said, there's a lot of people. What are you supposed to do? A lot of people want to cover the team. And this is the thing. The team, they need that. Because their profile is so big in large part because of their popularity, because of the coverage, because of the amount of people that have just a nonstop appetite for more Leaf news and content. And that's how you become as big and popular and profitable and valuable as the Leafs are. Yet at the same time, it is very unique in the sport. Right. And there are scenarios like that certainly in other sports. In baseball, the Yankees are covered differently than the Tampa Bay Rays, or the Oakland Athletics, but it's probably closer to the middle in a lot of those other sports. Just especially like football. You go to the NFL, every team is covered. There's no escaping NFL media.
Right.
There's no, I'd rather play there because they leave you alone. No, they don't. You know what I mean? If you're a quarterback in any of the cities, New York, Jacksonville, doesn't matter. You're being covered every single day by a lot of different people. But, that's what makes Toronto unique, I guess. And Canadian market's unique for that matter. Every Canadian market is crazy. But in Montreal, it's crazy. And
Montreal, but, the room just seems, I don't know, whether they stage it or whatever, it's a little different. It's packed. You go in there, maybe some other, Winnipeg, it's still busy, and Ottawa, it's still busy, but it's not as busy as the bigger cities. Vancouver, massive,
I'm not want to chirp anybody, Noodles, or question anyone, but I guarantee you there's people going in there with no
no, that shouldn't be in there. 100%.
Yeah, that no purpose. They're just I'm not going to ask a question. I got nothing. I'm just here for whatever reason.
I don't know. I'll go in there. Do you remember Hugh Grant with the Julia Roberts? What was that movie? Is it Notting Hill? Where he's Horse and Hound magazine. He puts it it's a made up magazine. There's Horse and Hound magazine people in there. I don't know who the hell who the hell is that person? Oh, that guy writes for this or whatever. I'm like, all right, whatever. Doesn't matter. It adds to the, as you said, Hayes, the massiveness of the Leafs.
Yeah. But I guess a part of it, on the ground journalism compared to Cecil down in Carolina is if you're actually there, maybe you do hear something, you pick up on something. Like there's value to that, clearly, being around it, and even off the record stuff that maybe you can apply to coverage in the future.
Right.
But there's no question there's also guys that are just down there because it's like, hey, I got to be here.
Yeah.
My boss knows they're playing tonight, so I'm going to come down and throw my mic sock in there. And, that's
it's just
kind of a part of it too. But
it's different in the different buildings. You go into Tampa, like the reporters have like a golf shirt on, socks, sandals. Like it's just casual, right? You go into some of these buildings, it's just so casual.
I respect that. The guy
I
that's
do
like,
too.
I'm
love
just, yeah, like Hazy used to love old school radio where it was like hoodie, dark.
the best.
Yes.
And I've totally lost sight of that because I haven't done it in so long. Every time we're in here, the lights are on.
Now I want the original blue lunch shirts and all of that. Now you're different. You look different now, so you can't have them. But it's
an issue too.
We got to go back to just casual.
Yeah.
I think
I used to
guys are
do
all
like when it
dressed up
first
now.
came on, and there were no I'd have the lights completely off in here, basically.
Off?
Well, I wouldn't be off completely. Like you had to be able to see enough.
I
like, to
remember,
see behind the
I
screen.
remember doing shows with Taddy. Like it was always dark in there.
Yeah, it was dimmed lighting.
He had a 4-hour show by himself.
Yeah,
You
that
remember,
was
like
crazy, man.
you go in there, like he's yelling and screaming at himself, like he would start an argument with himself. It was unbelievable radio. Like I would,
Yeah, thank you.
Come
I
up
don't know
with a
about that,
topic.
but-
You'd come up with a topic, and you'd be yelling by the end of it, like just how could that even happen? Like I loved it. I don't know why. I'd listen to some segments and I'm like, this guy is yelling at himself. Like,
Yeah, that's what it
his
was.
thoughts. It was awesome.
I can one up you as far as length of shift. I did when I first started out. I started out doing game night with Taddy, and I'd go in on a Saturday. I'm like, "What is this shift?" And he's like, "It's 5 to 11."
6-hour grind.
Mind you, Taddy's the best to work with and train under, and there's a lot of sound because there's games going on. So you could like pop into a game and get a highlight, whatever. But 5 to 11 or sometimes midnight, that is a
But you weren't
chef.
broadcasting. Were you broadcasting the game? Like and
No,
just doing it?
no, it was just called game night. You were bouncing around, scores, updates, some sound, highlights. Like that's what the show was. But there were some shifts, 5 till midnight, where you had to be on there, and it was honestly the best way to.
That's exactly what it was,
Yeah.
man. Like I look at those years when I was doing all those hours as like kind of getting my PhD in broadcasting.
That's it.
Basically.
God.
Where I'm sure if I listen back on them now, I'd be mortified on some of them because there'd be times you get to like the 4th hour and a guest would drop, and I'm like, I'm open for an hour, 4 hours in August, and I'm like, well, okay, what are we doing here? And you gotta come up with something.
Gotta come up with
You gotta get
something,
great. You
man.
can't just say, sorry guys, I'm not talking now.
This is why we got to give Brady a break. Now it is a different market,
Brady and I wasn't making $325 million.
Yeah,
either. That's
exactly.
another thing.
75.
Yeah, he's making a lot of money, Tom Brady, and I haven't found anybody that's given him a glowing review. Some people have been softer and said it was okay and good and not bad. I think. Listen, it wasn't that good. Let's call it what it is. Tom Brady struggled
stiff.
in the booth. It was stiff, but it was the first game. Give him some time. If this is still the case in week 10, 11, 12, Fox has a real problem because you're paying him that much money not to be prepared for the 2030 season. You're expecting him to hit the ground running.
Yes.
And be like, you're the man. And I'm curious because I think he's got the Cowboys the first 3 weeks of the season. I think he's calling Cowboy games.
To not be stiff because he doesn't seem like that kind of.
Well, it's got to be a level of comfort, though, like where he knows where to jump in. Like I just noticed his timing, where it was. What was this play-by-play guy's name again?
Kevin Burkhardt.
So Burkhardt would throw to him, and like it was pausing. You could tell he was thinking of what to say. It's got to be just natural. And Burkhardt is an unbelievable pro.
Well, yeah, I'm sure Burkhardt's waiting for the
probably
time where he
pointing to
doesn't
him.
need to lead him into it, where he just jumps in.
I think a lot of it is just comfort and timing.
Yes.
And I would like to see if he has a personality. Like I actually know one person who knows him, and said he's a good guy, he's funny and all that. But he hasn't shown any of that in the public persona.
That's what I said when they signed him, where you guys were all over me. Like, how can you say that?
I remember that.
Dude, I don't know if he can be an entertainer, because that's what it is. You have to be an entertainer. It's not about winning the game by a point. It's not about doing the ugly things. You are and you got to have a passion to entertain and a passion to broadcast.
Yeah,
well, those two guys last night, they're as good as it gets.
Aikman and Buck are phenomenal.
They're great.
Aikman is phenomenal. Collinsworth is phenomenal. And that's the bar. You know what I mean? Like Brady's, just because you're Tom Brady doesn't mean that you're in their same league. You've got to prove that, and you got to be different. You got to be your own guy, and you got to have your own approach. And I'm curious to see how that plays out. It's a side story that's really compelling all year.
Remember Joe Buck? Was it Joe Buck during the COVID where people were sending him stuff to talk about?
No, they wanted
sex
him
tapes.
to commentate.
Yeah.
Commentate on sex tapes. That was, and he had to send a warning out. Be like, I'm pleading with you. Please stop sending me these. I will not be doing play-by-play on sex tapes that you're sending me. That's how much, when COVID hit, people like, screw it, I'm sending this to Joe Buck. Maybe he'll send it back. Imagine that conversation over the dinner table. I have a great idea. Let's send a sex tape to Joe Buck.
Yes.
I don't know if you guys know this guy, Steve Inman. Have you ever heard of him?
Not familiar.
I follow him on Twitter. He does sports commentating to fighting and
I know
things.
that guy.
Oh my God, it's some of the funniest things. You've got to watch. Now some is really offside because people getting killed or punched and but some of it's just so funny. He narrates it and he narrates videos. It's so I think of it all the time. Joe Buck.
I'll check it out. I'll find it.
Yeah.
All right, we've got Kevin Harlan coming up, talking about greats, all-time great broadcaster. Kevin's coming up in about a half an hour, and some more Confirm or Deny still to come as well. OverDrive continues, TSN 1050 and on TSN 4. All right, TSN 1050 wants to send you on a royal road trip to the President's Cup in Montreal. If you heard the keyword announced this morning on First Up, call us right now, 416-870-1050, 416-870-1050, and the first caller through with today's keyword qualifies to win the trip. You could win a flight, accommodations, $500 spending cash, and 2 tickets to see the world's top players compete at the Royal Montreal Golf Club. Full details at tsn1050.ca. We're gearing up. We'll be there. We'll be on. We'll be doing shows there Tuesday through Friday, week of. Can't wait. It's going to be epic.
And you guys are going to bring your
Scheffler
clubs
on the set?
Well, we'll see. Yeah, we're trying to get Scheffler for sure. What would be the first thing you would ask him? You got Scheffler one-on-one.
Scheffler one-on-one. What
You don't
was it
bring up
like
the arrest.
seeing? What was it like seeing a winning check of $25 million for one event go in your bank account?
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be somewhat fascinating.
Okay, you'd ask money. Noodles, you'd ask about the arrest?
No, I don't think I would.
Of course you can. You can ask about anything, I think. Let's just presume you have carte blanche. You could ask anything. What do you want to talk about? You'd ask about the arrest. Is that what you're saying?
I might. I mean,
Okay.
I think it's just. I think it's topical with now it's brought up again with the Tyreek Hill stuff. But
Right.
I just also maybe his mindset. Like you guys have been talking about this guy, like he is that dominant, like kind of Tiger-esque. Like does he think about that? How dominant he's been? Does he just think he's going to show up and win any tournament?
Right.
Like I feel like
confidence
that,
question.
Like the confidence standpoint. Yeah. What would you ask him?
I'd ask about the footwork. How did you get to this point with that footwork? Just
Really?
bluntly, how do you hit golf balls the way you do? Your footwork looks like you're a 25 handicap.
Dude, there's some like
That's tough.
Dude, it's the truth though, Noodles.
it
His
is.
footwork is wild. I've never seen anything like it from a pro
like
player.
if you saw a guy in the range and like you would just say, "I'll play you for 1,000 a hole."
Immediately. And give you 10 aside. 10 aside, 1,000 a hole.
Yeah.
And because, that's the kind of guy, like you see these clips that go viral of the guy working out at the range, and that's what he's doing. And it's wild the way he sets up and hits the ball, and it's so precise. And Scottie will be on site. I can't guarantee you he'll be on set, but Doogie's working his magic. We'll see what we can do. So we referenced that McDavid spoke today, and you're an Edmonton guy. Curious how you feel about this. Let's play this clip, because this is what he had to say about living in Edmonton. He's been living there a long time. He's been 9 years in the league. Like he's
would
going
feel
into,
like almost home to him.
Yes, absolutely. Like you spent 10 years in Carolina. By year 10, you're probably like, I know this place like the back of my hand.
In the summer, I would say I would feel like leaving Muskoka, leaving my house, I'd be like, I'm going home right now. I'm going home. This has been fun. I'm going home. That's
Right.
what it felt like.
Yeah.
Exactly. So here's what McDavid had to say about playing in Edmonton.
And I think for people that haven't experienced Edmonton, don't know Edmonton, it's really easy living. It's really convenient living, you know. There's no hour drive. There's no traffic, although, I mean, the construction could be better. But, you know, it's really convenient living. It's really easy living, you know, stress-free living. So, you know, it checks a lot of boxes for a lot of guys. Yeah, it's not the beach or it's not beautiful weather all the time, but we're here to play hockey and we're here to be a part of something, and I think guys want to do that.
And the media is awesome.
That's right.
All right. Well, what do you make of that? Was that a glowing assessment of Edmonton, Alberta? What do you make of that as a Edmontonian?
He's not wrong, easy living, because everything's 20 minutes away. They're 15, 20 minutes. Like, you're not, like, he's not going, okay, I got to, like, I'll bring it back to the Toronto thing. When we even talk about it, if we're going to the studio that day, you got to give yourself 90 minutes because you don't know what the 401, you don't know what. Now, that being said, you talk to a lot of the players. The players live local. They, you know, Willie takes the, you know, whatever it is, the people mover, all of that type of stuff.
Yeah.
But like, it living in a big city, and I'll say New York because I lived in New York. You know, I've lived in LA before. Like, those big cities, you have to plan because of the traffic, because the amount of people. Edmonton doesn't have that. Yes, he talked about the construction. Well, Anthony Henday is a big ring road. Like, it took a while to build. There is construction, but it isn't like this massive city where everywhere you turn, you're like, God, I got, you know, the games, I got to be there for 5 o'clock. I got to leave at 3:45 because that highway is going to be a disaster. Like, it is quite, from a convenience standpoint, I don't disagree with him. I think for the most part, he's developed a lifestyle there that he's quite comfortable with. That's
Right.
what I would
He's
say.
in it to win it. It sounds like a guy that's going to be staying there himself, and he wants to win there. And he's like, if you don't like it, and if you want the beach and it's all about lifestyle, maybe this wouldn't be the place for you. But if you want to go play with 1A and 1B, the two best players in the world, and try to do something and win something, and it's easy, stress-free living, that's
I love
what
that,
he's
man.
basically selling.
I think if you're in Edmonton, you love hearing that, because you're never going to, no place checks every box for everyone. Like New York, some guys want to be in New York, some guys want to be in Carolina. You know what I mean? Some guys care about lifestyle, the schools, the money, the weather. There's so many different things that go into it. But that sounds like a guy, and he's let's be clear here. He has the luxury of being. He'll be the highest paid player in the league. He's going to make a fortune. He's making a fortune. Like, he doesn't have to worry about stuff that other players do.
Correct.
But he
100%.
also, that is a very business-like, I love it here. This is great. You guys can think what you want. But for me and my guys, we're in it to win it, and we're here to play hockey. That's a very refreshing take, as opposed to, I wouldn't be able to deal with it, the media, or, well, it's a Canadian, it's a fishbowl, I don't know about the weather. He's like, screw all that. Like, I can get downtown in 15 minutes. I can get to the rink in 15 minutes. I can go to the store. I go to the beer store, and people say hi, and that's it. And I'm here to win. And that gets lost in the shuffle far too often in pro sports.
I bet you the fans of the Oilers would have loved hearing that. Like, just if you're a fan of the team and a fan of, obviously you're a fan of him, but if I was from Edmonton and I was a fan of the team, I'd be pretty proud hearing that.
We should ask Big Strud. Maybe we can have him on at some point here. We should ask him about that, because Struddy lives it. Like, he lives there. Like, Struddy played in Chicago, played in Vancouver. Like, he could have easily settled somewhere else. Played in New York. Like, he could have settled somewhere else. He went home, like, for his hometown. He loves it there, and it's a smaller town. And the other thing, too, Brian, you brought something up, and I think it's interesting. Every player is different. Some guys want the hustle bustle. Some guys love the fashion industry. Some guys, like McDavid, seems, again, I don't know him. I know him a little bit, but, like, he seems like a pretty just, down to earth, simple guy, wants this, wants that. And, like, there are other guys that like maybe a little bit different things. I think Huberdeau had what was the car he had? Lamborghini,
Yeah.
like certain guy, like, lifestyle. I don't know. Like you see McDavid, he wears his gray suit, he walks into the rink, you just like there's certain guys. I think Draisaitl's kind of wired that way too. We forget, Draisaitl's from Germany. He grew up probably a different
how
life.
lucky
right?
are the Oilers to have two guys that want to play hockey, they want to be awesome at it, and they want to win. Like the Ferraris, like I've done the lifestyle thing. I was like, I had hockey guys, I have Harley Davidsons. I got to get a Harley Davidson. You get a Harley Davidson, and then afterwards you're like, what the hell did I need that for? You want to get a Porsche 911. One of my teammates was selling his 911. I'm like, I gotta have. It's just like, what do you need all that crap for? It's about playing hockey and it's about winning. And sometimes when you realize that later in life, it's just too late. You're like, you get caught up in all that stuff and you think it's important and it's nonsense.
I'll go a step further. Austin Matthews, when he signed his deal, like he seemed very comfortable going, hey, I like Toronto. Toronto's my home. He didn't say, like, I'm looking for, I grew up in Arizona. Like, there could have been a lot of different things. He's like, you guys thought I was going somewhere. He's like, I like Toronto. This is my home. Like, when guys commit to a city, it's not a monetary thing a lot of times. It's like, this is where I feel most comfortable. So it's not just reserved for McDavid and Draisaitl. There are guys who have committed to their organizations because they feel either they want to win or they like that city or they like the combination of what they've got going as well.
That's what happens all the time. A lot of times you do morph in to your surroundings. You take on your surroundings. You take on, that life because you're living a large majority of your life in those cities. And I'm sure there was a time, 10 years ago, if you asked American Austin Matthews, could you see yourself spending this amount of time in Canada or in Toronto? You'd probably say, I don't know. And I'm sure if you asked greater Toronto area Connor McDavid when he was 18 or 15, do you think he'd live in Edmonton? He'd be like, I don't know. But now he's been there and he's like, yeah, this is me now. I've grown up. We live here. I love it. We have relationships here. And, exactly. Every city's different. Every market's different. But you also there's a comfort level there. You have an appreciation for who you have, what you have, who you are, how you get treated, and if you're there just to play, which are the great players, that's generally the thought. Is I realize I'm here to just win, and then I'm going to live wherever I'm going to live the rest of my life and do it, and no one cares.
That's Sidney Crosby.
Exactly. He just wants to be in Pitt and knows Pitt, and that's what he's comfortable with, and he wants to win in Pitt, and that's it. Yep. And in the offseason, he goes back to Halifax, and that's that. And McDavid comes home and goes to Muskoka, and that's that. And Matthews goes to Arizona. Like, that's the way it goes. That's pro sports.
Yep.
But every city's different, and you got to take all those considerations into play.
Agreed.
All right, we've got Kevin Harlan in 20 minutes. Confirm with an eye, continuing our best bets brought to you by FanDuel, still to come as well on Jays Mets tonight. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app. All right, Overdrive continues, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Kevin Harlan in about 15 minutes. The NFL, they got pretty strict rules when it comes to who's active, who's inactive, the injury reports.
As far as what, reporting it, like getting it out there?
Yes, because of gambling and fantasy. Right? They won't say that directly, but that's precisely what it is. It's such a massive business. The gambling element, the fantasy element to it, and them pulling McCaffrey out last minute had huge ramifications on a lot of people's gambling, on a lot of people's fantasy. And I know if you're not into it, you'll roll your eyes and say whatever, but the NFL benefits greatly from those two partners.
So what do you think backlash of that, the lateness of the transaction?
I'm not sure what the NFL can do, but they'll investigate heavily, I guarantee it, because Jordan Mason, I felt for him last night. Guy comes out of nowhere. He ran for 143 yards and a touchdown. He was the best player on the field. He was unbelievable last night. And then he made the mistake of being honest, I believe, and saying after the game, well, I was kind of told on Friday I'd start. And then people went nuts because they're like, wait a minute.
Oh, boy.
Wait, you knew on Friday McCaffrey wasn't playing? And then Shanahan did his best to be like, no, we thought he was playing. Like, this just happened today. I had no idea. And I don't know how you investigate that, but it's going to be something I guarantee the NFL will look into. I wouldn't be
you go to the
shocked
kid and say, when did you know?
Well, I know, but that puts him in a bad spot because he's going to say, no comment. I don't want to piss off my coach. And my team, you know what I mean? Like, let's play the clip from after the game, or I don't need the one before where he said what he said. I just told what he said. He was like, I was told on Friday. This is Mason after the game, who's a young guy, probably has never done a podium before like that, because all the media is like, we want to talk to this guy. And this is what, all right, we'll play it in the next hour. We'll play it in the next hour.
Yeah.
Because I want to play, what he had to say post-game and kind of how he reacted, because you could tell he was bent out of shape because he was being honest on the field, and then it all blew up. And now he knows, like, Shanahan's probably calling him into his office saying, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah, but Hayes, if a couple guys in dark suits show up and knock on his door and say, when did you know? Like, you got to, it's not like you can bullcrap around that and say, I don't want to rat out my coach. You got to tell him the truth.
And it's on the record already. He said after the game, I knew on Friday.
Exactly.
Like, I don't even know if they have to go to him anymore. So, San Fran might get fined for that. It's not going to matter. Nothing's going to change. They'll pay the fine or whatever if that's what it is. They got to win in the win column. That's all that matters.
Exactly.
All right, hour 3 coming up. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app.